Hey, don't touch it. Why? What's going on? There's something wrong with the birds. Have you ever seen the film by Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds, or read the short story it was based on? Yes? Well, what's happening here is a very similar situation, except there's a reason for that. A reason that we're going to find out later. Right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Series 12, Episode 6, Praxeus. Okay, so Praxeus has a very simple premise. This alien virus thing called Praxeus gets into little plasticky microorganisms, and it's affected this planet, and so these scientists people who look like humans don't know who they actually are, but they deliberately release some Praxeus on Earth so they can find a way to cure Praxeus. These guys are technically the villains, and I'll talk a bit more about them later. And once the Praxeus gets into the microorganisms of plastic, including solid plastic itself, it starts to affect birds who eat plastic when they mistake it for food, and it gets inside their systems, and it causes them to go a bit crazy and act a bit out of character, and even attack humans. And when they scratch humans, they get infected with the virus, and they start getting these sort of scaly things across them that eventually cause them to dissolve. The alien creatures who brought them there had humanoid alien creatures. Well, actually, they seem to be proper humans. We just don't know who they actually are. But the aliens, they have a slower rate of Praxeus. It takes it longer for Praxeus to infect their bodies, so it overruns their bodies slower, and by the looks of it, it doesn't cause them to turn to dust. Just cover up with these scales and stuff. And when they crash to Earth in the Indian Ocean, and they accidentally crash into a submarine in the Indian Ocean, and they set up camp there, as well as in Madagascar and in Hong Kong, and they accidentally cause a space shuttle with a astronaut called Adam inside to crash, and they kidnap him and take him to Hong Kong to experiment on. He, however, sent a text to his separated husband. Can't remember his name. I remember the other guy's name, but to his separated husband for help, and he heads to Hong Kong and meets up with Graham and Yasmin to investigate. Meanwhile, the Doctor takes on Madagascar, and something strange is happening in Peru, and Brian goes to investigate the birds there and meets Gabriella. I presume she's Brazilian. She has a Brazilian football shirt wearing. She's wearing one. I'm not quite sure. And her friend has gone missing. I think that was Jemima. I think. Yeah. And she's gone missing. So Ryan and Gabrielle investigate Peru, and then join the Doctor to investigate go to Hong Kong and investigate. And then they all go to Madagascar, apart from Yaz and Gabrielle, who stick around Hong Kong for a bit to investigate, and eventually find themselves on a Praxeus created world underneath the Indian Ocean, where the sunken submarine is. And we see a survivor of the submarine in Madagascar earlier on in the episode, where the Doctor rescues him. Also turns out the Doctor has met 2 other people in Madagascar, a Chinese scientist, I believe she's Chinese, Suki Chang, and possibly a resident Mexican, not Mexican, Madagascan guy, possibly. I could be wrong. And the Doctor does some experiments in Madagascar to try and save Adam, whilst Ryan dissects the bird. It then turns out that Suki Cheng is the last of these alien creatures who they had previously seen in Hong Kong wearing hazmat suits and gas masks. And she escapes. Though she'll reveal later the information I've just told you about Praxeus. P.S. I like the bit where the Doctor's wondering, could it be Autons? I was wondering that as well when they were talking about plastic, but it's not Autons. It's not the nesting consciousness. Although that would have been a good twist. Well, maybe not a twist if we could see it coming with all the plastic, but it would have been a nice tie-in considering it's Autons. Maybe Praxeus is a Auton nesting consciousness originated disease. Perhaps that could be something to explore in a sequel potentially. So anyway, the Doctor and gang head from Madagascar to the Praxeus world after an attack by birds. P.S. Local Madagascan scientist dies off. Well, not quite off screen. We do sort of see his death being covered by birds, and his death has little fanfare. No one notices he's missing. No one even sees his body. No one cares. He's just killed without little any fanfare. At least with was it Jemima? Jemima, they actually went looking for her. Her friend was worried, and they actually went to the hospital where she was to find out that she was there. But this other character, he just dies with little care. So he seemed like a bit of a waste of a character. He's just there, and then he's killed off, and no one cares. You don't even acknowledge him, to be honest. Anyway, the TARDIS is able to create a cure for Praxeus on humans after some experiments on Adam, and the rest of the gang head down to the Praxeus world to confront Suki Cheng and find out all the information. However, Suki has planted some of the anti-Praxeus cure inside of her, and well, I suppose it causes the Praxeus to accelerate and kills her. So in this case, if you consider her the villain of the story, then this is probably one of this is one of the few 13th Doctor era villains to not get away scot-free, as some people have complained about some of 13's villains. She just lets them go. Tim Shaw in Woman Who Fell to Earth, although they did re-encounter him in Battle for Ranskorav Kalos. Possibly the Remnants in The Ghost One, and also Art Mount's character. Krasko in Rosa, Jack Robertson in Arachnids, possibly the Pating in Sir Andrew Conundrum, possibly the people in with the partition of India in Demons of the Punjab, possibly the Solitrax in It Takes Two. I'm just saying possibly for the ones if they get considered getting off lightly, no consequences. The Kasavian sort of get away in Spyfall, as does Barton, although the Master gets captured, and he'll be back at some point probably. The Dregs in Orphan 55, what's their names? I can't remember. The Scorpion creatures in Nikola Tesla, and the Jadoon get let off a little bit in Fugitive. But here, this is definitely one of the cases where the villain definitely gets some sort of punishment. In this case, killed off. A bit like with the Dalek in Resolution. So some of the villains do have some sort of consequences. Tim Shaw met his consequences in Battle of Ranskorav Kolos, and the Master, of course, got sent to the Kasavan homeworld. I suppose Kablam Charlie got punished, and the Witchfinders, the Morax got punished. Yeah, so there are occasions when the villains don't always get away scot-free. And the Arachnids, I suppose, too, in Arachnids in the UK. But yeah, anyway, moving on from that point. Eventually, one of the new supporting characters, the one I can't remember his name, the sabbatical cop who's separated from his husband, the astronaut Adam. He's then able to fly the spaceship into space and able to disperse the cure across Earth, meaning everyone's saved. And also, I thought it was going to be an Adric Orphan situation like an Earthshock, or an Orphan 55 situation where the TARDIS just couldn't go back for this person to save them when it looked like the ship was going to blow up. But thankfully, the Doctor managed to save them by using the TARDIS to going around the person, like in Parting the Ways and then Let's Kill Hitler. Those are the only two examples that come to mind, but I'm sure there is more examples of the TARDIS surrounding someone. Blink did the opposite thing, where it took off and left people, left Sally and Larry behind. That's the opposite of what the Parting of the Ways, Let's Kill Hitler thing. Sure, it's done it a few more times, and I can't think it's only done 3 or 4 times. 4 times if you count Blink. It must have done it a few more at least. But yeah, it's definitely a new series thing that happens every couple of years. But yeah, the TARDIS lands around Sabbatical Cop and saves him. Although the Doctor explaining it didn't feel that necessary, because we kind of know what is going on, or we can guess what's going on anyway. It's not like in Parting the Ways, the dramatic shot of the TARDIS landing around Rose and the Dalek was met with the Doctor explaining to Captain Jack, "Oh, I managed to land the TARDIS around Rose and the Dalek, and therefore I can able to rescue Rose without having to go out and face the Daleks just yet. Oh, hang on, there's one in the TARDIS. Get down." But yeah, I don't think that was necessary. But I appreciate the TARDIS landing around Sabbatical Cop character. Also have to say that the message this story was trying to get across, I think it got it across pretty well in the first shot of the plastic next to the river in Peru. I think it didn't need to go too much into explanations about the whole pollution is bad, plastic waste is bad. I think the message was pretty clear from that first moment. But it's the message of the story, more or less, or at least the undertones of it. I also thought this was the episode where the 13th Doctor wasn't going to go too much on an exposition babble, so to speak, because they seemed to be small pieces of talking, exposition about stuff, or fast speak, which is typical 13 at this point. But when we start learning about what the Praxeus virus is, and the whole cure, that's when we start getting the exposition-y stuff about it. From 13, when she goes into exposition mode, that she does, I'm pretty sure, every week now. So we're going to get away with it with not having it this week, but I guess not. But that being said, Jodie Whittaker continues to be amazing as the 13th Doctor, and the character continues to be brilliant. Some amazing writing. Loving smaller shots and moments where 13 gets a bit cross and annoyed, or just dark and serious again. At points like when she sort of when Yaz tells her she's and she's got to the Indian Ocean place, and the Doctor works it out. Works out that Suki is one of these alien creatures. You can tell on her face she's not happy. She's dead serious now all of a sudden. It's a good mix, like with Fugitive of the Judoon, of the fun side of the Doctor mixed with the more serious side of the Doctor. And you can go from happy, a little bit of a muddled dialogue stuff and loads of exposition all over the place, sort of slightly childish, eccentric Doctor one moment, and then snap, you get the darker, more serious mode for the Doctor when she's confronting the villains or people who aren't particularly very nice. And that is the side of the 13th Doctor I like more. Again, the similar thing could be said for the 7th Doctor. I like the more darker side to them. And it also fits with the acting really well. It also worked with the 11th Doctor as well, although I did find his fun, childish, playful stuff to be pretty fun, or at least earlier on in his tenure at least. But when he went dark and serious, ooh. So when the Doctors who are more known for being silly, funny, etc., go to their darker modes, that's when they get really good, like 7, 11, and 13, and I suppose 10 as well. Well, then again, 10 still pretty great anyway. So is 11, but especially when they go from playful younger especially when they go from playful, childish-like attitude, snap, they're dead serious within an instant. Brilliant. Also, the companions in this story get a lot more to do here than they've done throughout most of the series. That was something some people were saying about Pete Metique's story last year. He wrote something. He got all of the companions to do do stuff. Used them really well in that story, and yeah, I think they're kind of right. It's also probably the most of the companions have gotten to do as a whole, all three of them, since possibly Resolution, if not then Kablam. But yeah, and I think they got some really great moments here together, especially Ryan getting the dead bird and going out on his own for a bit, and Yaz then going out on her own with Gabriella in Hong Kong and then to the Indian Ocean. And Graham's still really fun and enjoyable. Also, I think we get the first use of those glasses. I think they're going to be popping up next week as well by the looks of the trailer. Or some images at least. But yeah. It's a good supporting character. Suki Cheng is a good supporting character, even when we find out she's a villainess, sort of. Although we don't really find out who the character really is, what alien species they are. Gabriella's a fun supporting character. The sabbatical cop is a pretty good character. I'm calling him New Duggan, by the way, because he kicks down doors like how Duggan from City of Death would. Although this New Duggan doesn't punch as many people as original Duggan, the better Duggan, did. And his separated husband, Adam, is also a pretty good character, and the story kind of revolves around trying to find a cure for him throughout parts of the runtime. Didn't think I think he's Madagascan, the Suki's assistant character was that great. I think he was just basically Dan. He had a pretty his death was pretty much just glossed over. We saw it, but everybody forgot about him afterwards. And Jemaya also disappointingly died. Thought she had a bit of a good chemistry with Gabrielle. Okay, let's say died. I mean, died early on without much with the character. And yeah, there's only this sailor left as well, the submarine sailor left, and the aliens. They're not really that amazing. We didn't really know much about them. We don't even know who they are. But the virus itself is a deadly virus. Some good story stuff and it looks great. Some great direction, cinematography, and editing. Apart from the bit when the bird scratches Jemaya, the editing wasn't very good there. But the rest of the story edited really well, and it looks really great. And it's a good story. I don't think it's particularly amazing. I think it's a very good story, good time, enjoyable. It's a decently paced one, but I don't think it's going to set the world on fire. It's not a bad story. It's not unlikable. It's not unenjoyable, but I think it's simply good. Some people have gotten a bit annoyed about it because it's a bit more anti-plastic or anti-plastic pollution, political message, and not enough sci-fi stuff. Although I think the alien bacteria sci-fi stuff and what it turns humans and other aliens into is a good idea and concept, and I think it works really well here. So actually, I think it's fine. And on the whole, Praxeus is a good story. I think it's a pretty good stuff. Some pretty good stuff here. A little bit preachy in places like Orphan 55, although not as bad as that. The Doctor doesn't turn to the camera and make a speech about humans needing to recycle plastic and stop polluting the planet. Otherwise, they're going to catch Praxeus and turn into these scaly creatures. Like they did like the dregs, if they don't sort out planet Earth, then they'll turn into the dregs for the various reasons spoken in Orphan 55. Yes, I know the speech in the Zygon inversion in that story that lasted about 10 minutes is very similar to the Orphan 55 speech and just is a bit preachy. To be honest, the Battlefield speech in part 4 of that story is probably a better version of that, to be honest. But I still like the Zygon inversion speech, but Orphan 55 does hammer it home a bit too much. I think Praxeus does it a bit better. I think it tells us the message pretty well, whilst also telling us a good story, which Orphan 55 struggled with. Whilst Cycle Inversion, on the other hand, and Battlefield did really well. Hello, Nick from the future here. Oh, whoops. Just coming in to give this episode a different score to what I gave it initially in the review. I actually gave it an 8 out of 10. However, after thinking about it, I thought maybe it's not that good. I thought it was a good story. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good episode. Liked it quite a bit. But initially it was an 8 out of 10. But I didn't know if it was 8 out of 10 good story, possibly, maybe. My opinion might go back and forth on this one. It might be different, but initially it was 8 out of 10, but now I've decided to lower it to a 7 out of 10, so Praxeus gets a 7 out of 10 from me. I might go back and forth on this one. It was 8, but now it's a 7. Still, this score probably won't change just yet. But if I did rescore it, it will probably be after the ranking. Otherwise, after another review, a re-review or something, possibly. But at the moment, I've decided to lower it to a 7 because I don't think it was that amazing. I thought it was good. Like I said, I thought it was a good story, good episode, and it's less preachy about its message than Orphan 55 and does a lot better with its sci-fi concept than that story did, whilst tying it into an environmental message. But yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was good, decent, fair enough. It was fine. Still a lot better than the 7 out of 10 stories from Series 11. Well, the stories I gave 7 out of 10 in that series and for Series 10. And those ones might even be going down, to be honest. There might even be some 8 out of 10s that will be going down to 7 or lower. So this one might even be better than those, but we'll see. But like I said, I think it's good, but I think it's 7 out of 10 good, not 8 out of 10 good, like what I thought it was initially, and after rewatching it and doing the review. But I decided to actually lower it to a 7. So yeah, so that's why we've got this quick score change. You'll see the original 8 out of 10 score I'll give it in the bloopers, but officially it is now a 7. Okay, back to past me to wrap up this review. And at the moment, out of 5 stories, I should say, out of 5 stories, it's currently my second least favourite. I prefer Spyfall, Fugitive, and Nikola Tesla over this one, but I think this one is still quite a bit better than Orphan 55. As individual episodes go, it's the same. Second least favourites so far, and don't be surprised if it's this position or a low position on the overall ranking when we get to that. But it's still a good episode, I think. I like it. Not amazing. It's not going to set the world on fire, and it's not going to do, and it doesn't have any shocking twists like Fugitive of the Jadoon did. But I think it's a good episode. Just a good episode. Okay, so next time is Can You Hear Me, the 7th episode of Series 12, and which is the 6th story, as Spyfall is a 2-parter, so that's the first story, and then Orphan 55, the 3rd episode, is the 2nd story, etc., etc. The finale will be in the last 2 episodes, 8 and 9, will be the 8th story, so 8th serial, in a way, of the series, if you will. So, yeah, so next week, Can You Hear Me, which sees the time travelers going across 3 different times and places yet again. We'll see what that's like. Also, I think it'll partly be in the 21st century. That will be the 3rd story in a row, and the 4th this series. 5th, possibly getting a 5th one if the series finale is set on Earth in the 21st century. Also, we were promised more Yaz police stuff, but despite some police knowledge and some police, just basically police knowledge from Yaz in this episode, and her going off on her own with Gabriella, she doesn't really use that much police knowledge, nor do we get her doing so much police stuff. I mean, a little bit, but not much. So, yeah, where was the promise of Yaz being a bit more using her police stuff to her advantage? I mean, we got a little bit, but not an awful lot. Well, at least you got some stuff to do this episode. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. And she's lost, her friend's gone, Gabrielle has gone missing. I like the bit where the, but thankfully the TARDIS was able to go back and save them, and yeah, so yeah, it's a good mix, like last week, with of use of yeah. So I think when the Doctors, when some of the sillier, funnier, so when some of the which was a bit strange, the editing is mostly that was a bit of an editing. The editing there wasn't that great, but every other time Doctor doesn't turn to the camera and make a speech about anti-plastics or stuff for a few minutes. Then again, I suppose. But I know, yeah, that is. So on the whole, Praxeus, I think it's a good story, and I'll be passing it at 8 out of 10. This score could change on potential future rewatches. Also, did you hear the Faceless ones in the Mac? No, I'm not going to do that. The Faceless ones in the Fury from the Deep. Okay, I'm not going to do that. It would have been the joke for the Orphan 55 review if I'd done it properly. If I'd done that one. But at the moment, I thought it was a good story. It's still currently my second least favourite story of this. Actually, I'm gonna. Okay, back to me to wrap up the review.